Alright, so now on to the big bad 4 marker. Alright, last part में हमने बस graph draw करा था. I explained you how that works. Now I'm going to explain the big bad 4 marker. Alright, so 1 plus 3x, ठीक है ना, less than 4x minus 2. अब हमने लास्ट वाले में 4x minus 2 का ही absolute value वाला graph draw करा था. Now before I do anything, alright, there are two ways we can solve this equation. One is algebraic, जो मैं अभी करने वाला हूँ. Second one is graphic. अब graphic के लिए, even though I have drawn a graph, I'm going to use Desmos, alright, to illustrate a point. क्योंकि exam में तो honestly I'm going to use the algebraic method, since I think so that saves time. मैं बैठ के graph तो अगर मैंने graph draw करा इस question paper तो फिर मैं जाके फिर graphically solve करूँगा, वरना तो मैं algebraically solve करूँगा. If you just had this B part, right, if this were like, अगर यही क्वेश्चन होता हमारा तो फिर मैं algebraically solve कर लेता, ठीक है ना. And that's my preference. You can draw a graph also if you're a visual learner. I'm mostly visual learner, but मेरे को लगता है कि ये टाइम बचाता है, तो yeah. Alright, so before we start this, I wanted to explain a very important concept. Absolute value of x is equal to 5. And absolute value of x is equal to 5. What does that mean about what does that tell us about the value of x? X is equal to minus 5. That is a possible case. X is equal to plus 5. That is also a possible case. Since it's like move 5 steps up or move 5 steps down, you're still vertically being displaced by 5, right? If that makes sense to you guys. Alright, so now that we're through with that basic part, let me get into a little bit more of a complicated case. We just know that the absolute value of x is greater than minus 5, greater than 5. No, greater than 5, right? Now what does that tell us about x? Now that those are two cases, alright? Yes, over here minus x is greater than 5 and x is greater than 5. Both of these cases में ये ऑपरेटर यहाँ पे ही रहेगा, and that is because कि हमने x की आइडेंटिटी ये रख दी है, ठीक है ना, कि x can be minus x and you put it in the absolute value operator and it will become minus, like, and it will become, and it will remain greater than 5. Alright, we put it in the absolute value, it will become positive and it will remain greater than 5, if that makes sense, right? This is just another possible case, and I'll explain you why this is valid, alright, with an example. So let's assume that the value of x itself is minus 6, alright, this case mein. So if minus 6 is greater than 5, I mean that's obvious, 6 is greater than 5, right? And in this case, ये तो irregularity हो ही सकता है, 6 is greater than 5. So yeah, in both cases, if you get what I'm saying, right? So that is why these are two possible cases, alright? Since हम इसका नेगेटिव वर्जन ले रहे हैं, we're not changing the sign of the inequality. कि मैंने ये गलती बहुत ही ज़्यादा दफ़ा करी है, and I think it's a very big misconception that if you're like me, you can also fall into the same trap. So no, this is an entirely different scenario that is still valid. हम ये scenario के लेके हम इसको multiply नहीं कर रहे -1 से दोनों साइड से. This is a different value, possible value of x, and the condition still holds true, right? So yeah, so now on to the actual problem we're solving ourselves. Alright, so that's case number 1. The x is greater than 5 while x is less than 5 in this case वाला case. नहीं, x is greater than 5 वाला case हो गया ये तो. And second वाला जो case है वो है x minus x is greater than 5. ये वो वाला case हो गया. Alright, so yeah, considering that, let's carry on. 3 is less than x. Alright, x is greater than 3. In other words, seven x is less than 1. X is less than 1 by 7. Now these two equations are obviously, these two facts are obviously inclusive. X obviously like mutually exclusive of each other. Like this cannot be x, this x and this x, this x and this x, they cannot be equal in any reality, right? Because like x cannot be less than 3 and less than 1 by 7 in the same universe, right? Right, guys? Alright, so now that we've solved it algebraically, let me show it to you graphically. The cases where 4x plus 2 is greater than 1 plus 3x. Alright? Let's use Desmos. I think I've already substituted into Desmos both the equations, so yeah. I have to do the same thing over again. Alright. It's 2x, y is equal to 1 plus 3x. Yes. Boom. And we did it. Wait. 1 plus 3x ही है ना? इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट से अजीब सा लग रहा है. Oh, sorry, I think I made a mistake. 4x, अरे भाई, it's 2x. It's minus 2. So yeah, that correlates at these points. That is 0.14286 is 1 by 7, by the way, if you guys are curious, in decimal form. And this is 3,10. Alright. So another thing I wanted to explain in detail, right? Another thing that I found interesting, I wanted to explain in detail. Alright. So इसके बीच में, that's what I'm gonna aim for. In between of this two. Y is equal to 4x minus 2. Y is equal to 3x plus 1. इसमें absolute value. और इसका vertex जैसे हमने पिछले वीडियो में डिस्कस करा था 1/2 है. तो इस पॉइंट से लेके इस पॉइंट तक जैसे x बढ़ता जा रहा है और उसके नज़दीक आता रहा है 1/2 के, this function is decreasing. Alright. और फिर ये फंक्शन जो है, दिस फंक्शन इज गोना हैव नो प्रॉब्लम, राइट? तो जैसे जैसे x बढ़ता जा रहा है यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक, ये फंक्शन फिर इंक्रीज करता जा रहा है. एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट, एंड आफ्टर दिस फंक्शन हिट 0, राइट? बाय पहले वाला फंक्शन हिट 0, राइट? सो द फर्स्ट वन हिट 0. आफ्टर दैट पॉइंट, slowly and steadily, as x keeps on increasing from here all the way up until like 3, right? X keeps on increasing all the way up until 3. What's going to happen is that as x keeps on increasing, the value of y in the first function is going to also increase, and the value of 3x plus 1 is already both of वैसे ही increase कर रहा है, right? But then what's going to happen is slowly and steadily the first function is going to catch up to the second one. And after they catch up at this point, right, this function has a greater gradient than this function, obviously, right? तो फिर we can say that like this function 4x minus 2, sorry, will become greater than 3x plus 1 after this certain point. And another thing, vertex का अगर हम reflection के हिसाब से देखेंगे ना, this is another function. इसीलिए this function can be greater than 3x plus 1 because it's literally like another function, alright? But it carries around the identity of the modulus operator 4x minus 2 because it is the negative equivalent of that. जैसे हम जो भी वैल्यू इसमें ले सकते हैं, it can either be 5 or minus 5, right? And both of those things can be x, right? So वो दोनों x की absolute value of x की identity carry करते हैं, although x is only like 5 or minus 5, it can't be both at the same time, right? So these two things carry its identity. So these are the possible solutions that we get. If what I just said makes sense, then I think it'll clear up everything for this confusing topic. So yeah, अगर नहीं समझ आया then you can rewind this part, because I think this is like the most crucial part of the entire thing. If my explanation was inadequate, please do write in the comments, or if you're one of my classmates, please, you can text me anytime if you have a doubt. So yeah, I think that does it for my second video on this topic. So long, and may the force be with you.